Let's go back to your background. So where'd you grow up? How did basketball become such a big part of your life?
So I grew up in San Diego, where the weather's always like it is outside right now. So I feel like finally just like home. Played basketball my whole life. Played in high school. Didn't end up playing in college, and just kind of missed it a lot. Like wanted to find a way to be close to the sport in any way I could, and kind of felt like I don't think that I knew what basketball scouting was. I don't think any middle school kid is like can't wait to be a basketball scout one day. Everyone wants to be a basketball player, obviously. So kind of found my way into this by seeing that this was the next closest thing to not playing, and got an internship with the Rockets right after I graduated from USC. Been 11 years in some version of NBA or college basketball now.
So I remember reading a story. How did you get that internship with the Rockets initially? How did that come about?
So I was interning for a sports agency called Wasserman Media Group, if you guys have heard of that, and then was interning for the LA Clippers. So I was just trying to find my way in. And there was a bunch of NBA intern postings that you guys have seen from Teamworks Online. So I was, applied to the Pacers, applied to a bunch of ones, was interviewing with them, but kind of got a stroke of luck a little bit. My current boss, but also my first boss in the NBA, Daryl Morey, his daughter wanted to go to USC. I found out that they were visiting and they needed a tour, and I kind of hopped in and was like, I'll give them a tour. And then at the end, basically attacked Daryl with my scouting reports and asked him if they were hiring, and they happened to be looking for an intern. So he put my name in the process, but I still had to go through the whole process and got hired as an intern right after I graduated.
So in school, and then you made the leap. You've been in California pretty much your whole life at that point,
yeah,
right?
Never
and
lived
then you
outside of
made the
California.
leap to go to Texas.
Yeah.
What was that decision like? I mean, it's obviously easy. Oh man, I'm going to go to the NBA. But what was that decision like for you?
Kind of a no-brainer, honestly. I don't think I thought that much about it. I didn't know anything about Houston. I'd never been to Houston. I had no idea what Houston was, but I was like, I get to go work for the Rockets and work. And they told me it was a one-year position, and they decide at the end of the year if you're kind of good enough to keep around. And it was a scouting internship, so they kind of train you how to scout. They send you to a bunch of local games, and you come back with reports, and they write them up and tell you how you're doing and all of that. So it was just a no-brainer for me. It was oh my gosh, I get to go work for a very good NBA team. In 2015, Dwight Howard was still on the Rockets. James Harden was also on the Rockets. And we were we were going into the year projected to be a finals team. We ended up barely making the playoffs that year, but the whole time I was with the Rockets, we were awesome. We made the conference finals. We were really good. So to be able to go and work for that team was an absolute no-brainer. I don't think I thought that much about it. Once I got the call, I was like, yep, I'm in. Tell me when I have to be there.
So then you go out on the road and you're looking around and there's a bunch of white males or, males out there. There's no females. Yeah. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, something that's great about, I think, my family is that I never really thought about it. People ask me this question all the time, and I don't think it ever really crossed my mind until other people brought it up to me. I think my parents raised me to be confident and, be who I am and be confident in my work and what I do. And so I don't think I realized maybe until 6 months in, I was like, oh, okay, people are treating me differently. This is interesting. I've been very lucky to have very strong mentors my whole career who've really taken me under their wing, including Daryl, including my first boss there, Gerson Rosas, who was the assistant GM, BJ Johnson, who was our longtime scout, and they really took me under their wing and kind of showed me how to carry myself, which I think helped a lot of how to be professional, knowing that everyone's going to look at you differently maybe than they do everyone else, and how to carry yourself, and they were just instrumental in that. So yeah, I feel lucky that it was never something I thought about. It was never something that worried me, and I think over time I kind of realized how to handle yourself in those environments.
Personally, I've got a keen interest in what you're doing. My son is a scout for the Dolphins. He's 24.
Nice. Awesome.
Okay, I know the path that you went through. I know how difficult it is to get to that point. And then you take it a whole nother level to now getting to where you're overseeing a scouting department for the Philadelphia 76ers. How did that come about?
I mean, I wish it just happened overnight. 11 years. It took 11 years to, or I guess I got this job last year, so 10 years to get here. I ended up leaving the Rockets, which was a very tough decision, but of my own accord, to go back to school to get my MBA. I only applied to MBA programs with good basketball teams because I knew that I wanted the balance of, bettering my education for my long-term growth, but also getting the chance to, work more closely with the team, be on the floor, be at practice, and do the things I knew what my hole was, and my hole was that I hadn't played. And so how close can I get to basketball, and how much can I grow my development to help my long-term career? So I chose to leave the Rockets, go to Duke, work for, obviously the opportunity to work for Coach K was pretty unbelievable, so couldn't really say no to that. But also get my master's and know that, okay, for my long-term success, it's going to be helpful to be like have this kind of line item on my resume and have this experience, and also got 2 years working super directly with that team. So I think that making that choice and kind of betting on myself with the risk, right, that like jobs in sports are hard. You're not guaranteed to get back. I didn't know that I was going to get another job. I could have not gotten another job. And I, luckily spent the time networking and meeting with people and was able to get a job with the Grizzlies after I graduated. But I think just betting on myself and making that choice, and, it worked out well in the long term.
I think being around Coach K is not gonna hurt you.
Definitely didn't hurt.
I didn't put that purposely on there because I wanted you to share with the students about that experience with Coach K, because that is a remarkable learning opportunity to be around one of the great coaches of all time.
Yeah.
Whether it's pro, college, doesn't matter, and Olympics, all that. All right, so they have plenty of questions, so we'll open it up to the students who would like to go first with a question. Alan, you got your hand up first, so I'll go to you.
So you got to spend time with Coach Krzyzewski. Obviously, publicly we know him as a guy that won national championships with Duke. What is something that people may not know about him, but that you got the chance to know about him?
What a good question. I think that everyone knows that like all these big 5-star type of names go to Duke. So my first year there was Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish, all 5 stars, all like pretty big personalities. And I think watching Coach manage all of those people without anyone feeling left out or anyone feeling unimportant was just like a masterclass to me of like, you hear about NBA teams with a bunch of superstars and how do you manage them and how do you make everyone happy, and to have all of these big name people come there and accept a role and be happy, and watching him navigate that all year, I think maybe is like an underrated part of what makes him so great that maybe people don't talk about as much.
Pretty special. All right, go ahead, Ian.
Here's my question. From working with, like I said, a mastermind like Daryl Morey and Coach K, what is the best lesson you took from them, whether it was scouting or life itself?
There's I would say a lot of great lessons. I don't know that I have just one to think about, but I think over all of my stops, the biggest maybe like repeated thing that I learned was, I think we all think we know what hard work is, and everyone comes in being like, I'm gonna work hard. Of course everyone wants to say they worked hard, but learning like what that truly means, like sometimes it's not very pretty and sometimes it's not very fun, and I work most weekends and I work a lot of nights, and I think really understanding from each person like how much you have to give to do well at these jobs. I think seeing that and seeing how much each one of those people, Zach Kleiman, my boss in Memphis, who's unbelievable and was one of the youngest GMs in NBA history, Daryl, Coach K, like all of them kind of took hard work to a different level that I couldn't even imagine. And so watching them do that and learning from them was probably a big life lesson for me.
Very good. Ready?
If there was ever a time where it felt like too much, how did you handle it?
I think that like leaning on your family as much as you can, of like knowing your line a little bit, but knowing that like working in sports, you're probably gonna like push yourself harder than you think you are. So I think, like finding the little bits of time for yourself. Like the thing I always say for my job is I work most Saturdays and Sundays, but sometimes Monday will be really quiet. So like you get to make sure you take a walk outside on Monday or do something to find yourself and like find what works for you. And I think like having a strong personal life is a really great balance for this type of job. It's sometimes hard to fit it in and find your pockets for yourself and the people in your life, but I actually think it makes me a better employee to have a close circle, to have people I can call and people I can rely on.
So what is your day-to-day life like now as a general manager, and then working for this G League team but also for the Sixers? Just kind of share us your kind of how you balance the two.
It's a bit chaotic, I'm not gonna lie. I'm sure everyone says this, but every day is so different, and especially with the Delaware role and the Sixers role. Like whether I'm in Delaware, I'm usually going to practice, talking to the coaches, watching practice, getting ready for our next game. Or if I go, our Sixers offices are in Camden, New Jersey. If I'm in Camden, it's kind of a totally different type of day. working on, as you mentioned, like pro scouting. That's anything G League, that's anything and current NBA players, that's anything international. So like this week, the Bluecoats are on the road, so I'll actually fly to Europe for a week to scout a bunch of international players to kind of find that balance of like making sure that that part of the job isn't, you know, falling through the cracks while dealing with everything else. So really depends on the day, but kind of trying to stay as organized as possible. I think that's a big thing for me of like, what are the things I need to accomplish? How do I organize my day? Okay, Delaware's on the road this week, so like what other things can I fill in while Delaware's on the road versus when they're home, and have to be more present there. So trying to be as organized as I can with everything.
Well, you need to fill in pizza with the pros. I mean, you know, before you go to Europe, you got to have pizza with the pros. All right, other questions. Go ahead, Leo.
So I think a lot of the ideas what we as the public have of scouts is like sit at the bleachers, taking notes at a high school game. But what's the pro scouting aspect like, and how does that affect not just your job in Philadelphia, but with G League too?
Really good question. So the cool part about being the G League GM and pro scouting is that they do go hand in hand. Like we're signing most of the 2As that are of interest from other G League teams or our own. This year we've signed them from other teams and from our own team as well. So that part does go hand in hand because just watching a bunch of G League games, you know, does help with like overall pro scouting. On your question on what pro scouting looks like, it is really different from what we call amateur scouting. And so like for an amateur or like high school or college game, you don't really know the prospect. You're coming in just trying to learn whatever you can. When you're going to trade for a player, you kind of have a baseline for who they are already, so it's not the same level of like just trying to learn the basics. But one, you're trying to see like what changes are being made. You have this baseline of like, is the shot getting a little better? Is the on-ball defense getting a little better? Like, what are your baselines of this player and how are they trending up or down in that direction? A big part of pro scouting is actually information gathering. So let's say tip-off is at 7. I'm probably there at like 4:30 to meet with the coaches on the other team and, you know, like chat with people. And you're not kind of like going up to them and be like, tell me about your player. You're kind of just like chit-chatting and seeing what information you get about their players, about the team they're playing, and all of that. So it's a combination of all of those things.
Okay, Owen?
So with the Bluecoats having played at Xfinity Mobile last week, what was that kind of like for you, just working with both teams to kind of see like worlds collide, I guess?
Yeah, we're really lucky to have a really strong business side, and our business side in Delaware is very in line with our business side with the Sixers. So lucky for me, in terms of logistics, like they took care of all of it. I'm sure you guys have seen or met Alex Yo, who, you know, really spearheaded that whole process. So for us, I think it was some of the logistics was our guys haven't really played there, so we were trying to find a way to practice there beforehand. We didn't get a chance to do that because the court was too busy, but it is a truly, really different experience to be in there because it's just a bigger arena. There's less people, like it's less compact. And so it was very cool because we had a bunch of the Sixers coaches there. We had a bunch of the Sixers players there. So that experience, I think, was really great for our guys. But it's, a totally different type of environment than what any of our people were used to.
So Owen is a broadcaster, so you did the game, and you do the games obviously at Chase Fieldhouse. What was it like for you?
I thought it was pretty neat. It was cool, like getting to like see just like looking up at the scoreboard and like seeing like the points and the stats. And
Having a
stuff.
scoreboard was nice too. That was helpful.
Yeah, there was about 3,000-4,000 screaming,
Yeah.
you know, public school kids that
For
were there.
sure.
So that was it was a neat atmosphere for sure.
We got the win, which was also the most important.
It got a little close at
It
the
got
end.
a little
though.
dicey,
Got a little
but it
close
doesn't
at the
matter.
end.
That score we
Yes,
won,
it did.
so we'll
Yes,
take
it did. Yes, it did. All right, Mason, you had a question.
How do you feel about like the front office wise building a G League roster prior to the season? How do you balance like young draft picks versus 2As and also like veteran players in the G League as well?
Yeah, it's very interesting because every single NBA team will answer that question, I would think, differently. Some teams only care about the NBA players' development and care nothing, like the rest of the team, whatever. If the team is bad, they don't care. So we, as I hope you guys have noticed, like we kind of care about it being a competitive team at the very least. We've had a pretty good history with that. We've obviously won G League championships. So finding that balance of finding maybe like some diamonds in the rough, like for example, Marjan Beauchamp was an E10 with Exhibit 10 with us, and then now he played really well and became a 2A, and we hope he has a long-term future with the Sixers. So trying to find that balance of a competitive team, but also a good development situation for, you know, your roster players. Like Jedi Broom has spent most of his season with us. And then like finding, diamonds in the rough and using that balance. And then interestingly, like one thing that we do that maybe not every NBA team does is try to experiment as much with different ideas for ways we can play with the Sixers, use the G League as an opportunity to try out those ideas. So at times, a lot of the things I just said can be competing interests. So it's a bit of a balance and a push and pull of how to kind of go about this, and which guys come to you. We've taken a lot of bets on guys who've been in the NBA and maybe didn't make it, and given them a second chance. But yeah, you come in and you have a current roster. The thing that's interesting about the current roster is a bunch of guys might go overseas, so you keep their rights. Who you have to make a bunch of calls in August to see, hey, are you even coming back? Are you even interested in coming back? What are you looking for? And then you kind of build off from there.
You mentioned Broom. I mean, he was SEC Player of the Year at Auburn. You're talking about high-level players that are playing in the G League. Can you just describe or explain what the difference is between a G League player and an NBA player?
Yeah, I mean, you can usually tell pretty quickly when an NBA player is playing in a G League game. You can just usually see that talent gap pretty quickly. Like when they're just playing, the game just comes easier for them. And there's various reasons of that. G League play, average height is a little bit shorter. There's a different pace of play and all of those things. So you can usually see pretty quickly who's able to dominate at that level. Mm-hmm. But that being said, tons of rookies, sophomores, even third years who have gone on to be great NBA players, there wasn't playing time with the NBA team, and our MO has always been, rather than sit you on the bench and have you not play minutes and just be with the NBA team all the time, we'd rather you come and spend a bunch of time with us to get to play a lot, because we don't think you're going to get better if you're not playing a lot. So luckily our setup, as I hope you guys have seen, is pretty great. We've got a good arena, we've got good facilities. Not every G League team is so lucky, and I think guys take it a little bit harder maybe to play in the G League because they're going to a not great environment, versus I think we've had a pretty good setup and people are pretty happy to play with us.
That's 25 minutes down 95 and you're right there. It's
exactly.
It's easy to go back and forth.
Yeah, and guys can play in our game and go back for the Sixers game. It's very convenient to be able to have that kind of setup.
Because if you're a 10, 11, 12 guy on the bench and you haven't played in a little while, next day you can play in a G League game, get a lot of minutes,
exactly.
And then boom, the next day you could be back up with the Sixers, and if a player gets hurt, maybe you're in the game. It's pretty wild. I mean, there's been times when I've been at a Bluecoats game, there's 5 players who start for the Bluecoats, and this is over the years, but 5 players who start for the Bluecoats who have been in an NBA game that year.
Yeah, for sure. And what's cool with us in particular is that Daryl watches almost all the games, as does Coach Nurse. So if let's say you're a two-way player and you play well, that's going to be, your opportunity isn't when you're sitting on the bench. Your opportunity is playing well in the Bluecoats game. Coach Nurse sees it and is like, man, this guy's playing really well. I would really love to give him a shot in the NBA game.
Okay, all right, let's go back. Question? Go ahead, Gerasmos.
So from your perspective, what is something special, in your opinion, that the Bluecoats do more uniquely compared to the other organizations you've worked at?
So the winning piece and the focus on winning is, I would say, 8 to 10 G League teams maybe invest in it the way that we do. So that's, I think, a big difference. And the belief there comes from, we just think you're better, you will develop better if your environment is a winning environment. In a losing environment, you're going to develop losing habits. In a winning one, you hopefully develop winning ones. Having the facility that we do, I think, if you were to walk into some of the other G League gyms around the league, you would be shocked how much nicer our gym is. Even the back area where the strength room and the weight room and everything is, way nicer than a lot of other G League facilities. So investing in our facilities, having a good setup for them, having the proximity be close, those are all a bunch of things. And I think also just having the organizations be in tandem, I've seen very different experiences. For example, when the G League season ends, all of the coaches just revert to become Sixers coaches. Other teams, when the G League season ends, those people have no affiliation with the NBA team. So that kind of being in line, being unified, working in tandem is not the norm.
When you look around here and you see young women that are here in our program, it's probably changed quite a bit since when you first got involved. When we already talked about you were at one time believed to be the only scout out there. What does that say about where the industry's going, and as far as opportunities for the women that are here with us tonight that are available in sports today?
I mean, from when I started in 2015 to now, it's night and day difference. I think it's closer to normal to see women in locker rooms and in different roles around the league. I still think we've got a long ways to go. I think we've got a lot of progress to make on. But I think that more like before when I was hired, it was more of like a, oh my gosh, what is a woman going to be like in this role? I don't think that exists anymore. I think if a woman applies just like a male applies, I don't think there's like a why is this person applying thing. So we've made progress. I think we've got a long way to go, but I don't think I would hope that in this day and age, at least in basketball, because I can't really speak to other sports, and I think NBA tends to lean a little bit more liberal and open-minded than maybe some of the other sports do, but I don't foresee huge issues at this point. And if there is, the nice part is like people in basketball will call you out. Like this is not a place where like bad behavior lets fly. And I've been in situations where someone has made a comment in front of me or something, and NBA players have called someone else out. Like my staff has called people out. So luckily, I think we're really trending in the right direction.
Has there ever been a female GM in the NBA?
There has not.
There is a pretty good history of GMs with the Blue Coats moving up. Jameer Nelson now
For sure.
moved up, assistant GM of the Sixers.
Yeah.
Prosper was there, Elton Brand. I'm thinking of names that have come up
Yeah.
over the time. Is that the goal for you?
Well, luckily, like, I feel like I'm in a pretty good position with the Sixers right now. So I really love kind of getting this experience. The G League GM experience is pretty unparalleled because you kind of get this like mini microcosm of making all of these decisions and also seeing how they go, which is not really as much always true on when you're on the team, on the NBA team side. You're not usually the sole decision maker versus, not to say that I'm the sole decision maker in the G League, but oftentimes I get to try things and see how they go. And so that learning experience hopefully will be really useful for the future of my career, yeah.
It'd be pretty cool if we had the first female former Pizza with the Pros guest. I'll take that.
We'll see, one step at a
That would
time.
be pretty good. I'm not in a rush. It's okay. I'm just throwing it out there. All right, all the way in the back.
You mentioned earlier that you're going to Europe. What is the difference in recruiting like someone from Europe or like an international player versus recruiting somebody from America?
Really different. So as I mentioned earlier, when you're scouting an NBA game, you kind of have like a pretty strong baseline on the guy. With international, you know a lot of these guys loosely. So when you're watching them, you kind of like, you've watched them for years. They're kind of been in the system of guys that we're scouting. But the big question is always just translation. Like, especially if it's someone who's oftentimes in Europe less athletic, how are they athletically going to translate? Or some of these guys, they're the biggest star on their local European team, and they're going to have to come and be the ninth man on an NBA team. How are they going to take that? What is that going to look like for them? Are they going to hate that? Would they rather make slightly less money and be the guy in the big fish or whatever it is, fish market thing? Like, which one would they rather? So it's very different, and it's probably one of the places that I value live scouting a little bit more, because I think a lot of the work now you could do, especially in pro scouting, you could probably do on film. But with international, I think there's a big value to live scouting just to see how athletic they are and like get a feel for how they would translate to the NBA.
Good question. Let me go, Sam.
What's your relationship with other NBA G League GMs?
Yeah, so when I got the job in July, August, I would say I knew 10 to 15 of 30. Now, obviously, I know all 30. You're on the phone with them quite a bit. The G League trade deadline was last Friday. I don't think you have to know them crazy well, but you have to, be able to pick up the phone and talk to them and kind of know what their priorities are, what their NBA team is advising them to do, and what their tendencies are. So there's certain ones that I'm closer with than others. The RGV, which is the Houston Rockets G League team, their GM was a co-intern with me at the Rockets many moons ago. So like there's certain ones that you're very close with, but certain ones that you're just starting to get to know.
You just made me think. The Blue Coats had an open tryout right here at Rowan.
Yes, we did.
That's the first time I met you, and that was in September. Yeah, September.
Yeah, September.
What happens on one of those open tryouts? Did you get anyone for that? The big tall guy was one guy that I know was.
I'm trying to think if we actually brought. We had someone who was there who's a practice player for us now, but I'm trying to think of anyone on the. I don't think anyone on the roster came out of that.
But you found. I think the team has found players over the years at that.
Sure.
So what are you looking for in that environment when it's like a 2-3 hour session and you're trying to evaluate? Is this guy worth bringing in?
Yeah, it's hard because you don't want to overreact too much to those types of environments. But on the other hand, a lot of these guys were maybe like lower level college players who you haven't seen live before. So it's really kind of like seeing them live, seeing how they move, seeing how they carry themselves, all of those things. but you want it to be a piece of the overall evaluation. If you're solely making your decision on just that one thing, you're probably going to make a mistake, but you can use it as a data point with all the other data points together.
Perfect. Okay. Right there. Go ahead.
My goal is learning to be a pro scout like you. What do you think if anything, I can do now to start helping me?
The biggest thing that I tell people on this is at some point you're going to get an interview and you should have scouting reports ready, like lots of them. You should be practicing them, you should be writing them. If what you want to be is working in a front office, the amount of times I'm in an interview and I ask someone if they've ever written a scouting report or who they like, and they just look at me with a blank face. Like, if you know that that's the niche you want to work in, like, be prepped for that. Be working on it already. Like, I was writing at certain websites, writing scouting reports because I realized this is what I want to do. So I think a lot of people feel, oh, okay, I'll get the job and then I'll figure it out. When really it's, before you get the interview, you should be pretty prepared and have a bunch of things to show them. Because, you know, in my example that I gave where I had, like, was asking for even an interview, I had like 7 scouting reports that I sent in that email. And I was like, look at all the things that I do so that they know that I'm serious and they know that I know what I'm talking about. At some level, when before you work for a team, you still have a lot to learn, but at least that you're somewhat committed to what the role is.
Really good question. Right here.
What was the process in adding Dalen Terry to the roster? You know, him being a high caliber player for the Bulls, being very impactful. And how was the feeling of adding softly a future in the main roster?
Yeah, Dalen's awesome. So one of the things that I kind of mentioned earlier that we look at is someone who maybe it didn't work out in a certain environment, trying to figure out why, and then is there like untapped potential there? And with Dalen in particular, he was kind of in a weird spot where he wasn't playing a lot with the Bulls, but also wasn't assigned to the G League, so he just really hadn't played a lot in a long time. And when he did play, he was pretty good. So I think our job, especially in our pro group, is kind of be identifying those guys. And I actually scouted Dalen in college. I've liked him for a long time, and we had done background work on him, that he's a phenomenal kid and a hard worker and all of those things. So I think it starts as quickly as you see, okay, he might get traded, and then you're trying to figure out what's happening and laying the groundwork as quickly as you can so that when it comes to a 2A level, someone like him is going to have a bunch of options. So he has to choose you. So you kind of have to make a pitch on why we're the right environment for him, why he feels like he has a path to play with us and all that.
Okay. Let me go right over here.
So you guys previously talked about Janai Broom, how he was sensational in college last year at Auburn, and now as a rookie, he's been sitting in the G League all year. What traits notify you when a player is ready to move up to the professional league?
So with second round picks, it's pretty normal, like to come and play a lot of games in the G League this year, especially when like the NBA team has a lot of bigs. Like it's very normal behavior, and most second round picks do what Janai's been doing. And what's great about Janai is you've seen him get better all year. You've seen him get more productive all year. And unfortunately, he actually just tore his meniscus, so he's going to be out for the rest of the season. But before he tore his meniscus, he was playing the best basketball of his year pretty easily. Like, he'd made such progress. And to watch that progress is awesome. I think in terms of when you get your shot with the NBA team, really just depends. Like, is there opportunity? Is he ready to play there? That kind of comes down to Coach Nurse, and when Coach Nurse feels like he needs, especially Janai is a different type of big. He's not really a traditional big. So when does Coach feel like he needs him to be up? Or also the reality, which what happens with most of these players is someone from the big club gets injured. That's usually your shot to get a chance with the NBA team. And you hopefully get that shot, and hopefully you play well, and then you stay up there and you get to like continue to build on that.
Very good. Okay. All the way in the back.
How did the new rule with the pros allow to go back to college affect the G League?
I wish I had the answer to that question, because I think the biggest thing is we just don't know. Like, Charles Bediako was with the Motor City Cruise, the Pistons G League team, went to Alabama, I think played 2 games, but then they ruled him ineligible afterwards, and he can't come back to the G League based on the G League rules. So I think we're all living in this, like, I don't know type of world where, like what's going to happen to any of these situations. There's a player actually at the Xfinity Live game, played for the Westchester Knicks, Dink Pate, and there was a college coach at that game to recruit a G League player. Like, that kind of blew my mind a little bit that that's where we're going. So I think the answer is I don't really know, because some of these players, they might just decide these players aren't eligible. The rules are going to change so quickly. So it's surely going to change quite a bit, but I don't think we know yet what it's going to look like.
It's crazy. It's like the Wild Wild West right now, isn't it?
It really is.
I mean, that's, well, the college game Could you see, now you spent time with Coach K,
Yep.
you were in the college game. What do you think of the college game now? I mean, does it need some kind of structure or something? Because it's just, I mean, NIL, the transfer portal, it's just really
I think more
challenging.
structure will come. I think that if anything, it's going to have to get even a little bit worse. And then they're going to have some kind of overarching, sweeping changes. They've already made some, like from last year to this year, the way you can spend money is already different. But it's still a lot of money that you can spend. So what that ends up looking like, I don't know. I do think, like, you know, paying the players and giving them opportunity isn't a bad thing. Like, more of these international players are coming in and getting an opportunity to play here. So I think there's positives that are coming of it. But I'm guessing at some point more regulation is going to be coming in.
Was there ever a time when you thought of staying in the college game? You know, there's GM roles now and all that stuff. Have you ever thought about anything like that? Or once you got a taste of the NBA, you want to go back there?
So when I left Duke in 2020, the college GM thing hadn't happened yet. So it was before then. I'm still very close with a bunch of different college staffs, including Coach Shire was my boss then and is now obviously the head coach at Duke. I think that it's an awesome opportunity and it's something I would want to do at some point in my career, but at the same time I'm enjoying the NBA side. So I would say, like, I'm open-minded to anything, and I think also working for a program you really care about. So for me, that would be Duke or any programs back in San Diego, and like being a part of helping them grow and rise, I think would be very cool.
All right, very good. Keith.
So I'm gonna ask you this. It is obviously March, and March Madness is around the corner. From a scout and GM perspective, who do you have winning the tournament?
I'm going to say Duke because I went to Duke, so got to root for my guys.
They're looking pretty good.
We
They
are
took care
looking
of Carolina
good.
pretty easily the other day,
Yes,
didn't
they
they?
did.
They
Yes,
did.
they did.
Yeah, a little while. But March Madness, what will you do during March Madness? And a player that performs well at March Madness, how much does that enhance their draft status by playing well?
Yeah, I think actually a lot of mistakes are made from overweighing the tournament. Like, the tournament's definitely important, but at the end of the day, like, it's just, it's a basketball game just like it was a basketball game a few months ago. Yes, if you are able to live up to the moment or not live up to the moment, do we take that into account? Sure. But it's really important not to overreact to those games just because they're national TV and everyone's watching and everyone's caring. So we actually don't end up scouting, like most NBA teams, this is not just ours, don't scout the tournament live that much. There'll be some games in Philly this year, so we'll go to those. But you're usually not flying around like crazy to go scout the tournament, largely because, yeah, like we're all a little bit fearful of big mistakes have been made from overreacting to a few good games in the tournament. We'll usually watch them in different stops I've been at. You've kind of like, everyone kind of hunkers down in the office and watches a whole bunch of the games and has like 4 TVs on and watches a bunch of the games together. Honestly, like at the end of the day, it's still basketball. Like this is our jobs, but like it's still fun to watch March Madness all together and have all the TVs up and get like a joy out of it. So yeah, Final Four is usually a good networking event, so a lot of people will go to Final Four. If Duke makes it, I'll go to Final Four to support them. But yeah, it's not as big of a deal to us as I think that maybe the perception is.
Do you stay in touch with Coach K?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Is he doing well?
He is doing well.
He likes retirement?
I think so. A
Yeah.
little antsy, but
I would imagine being a little antsy. All right, let me go right here. Go ahead.
As an aspiring coach, what recommendations do you have that can help me further my career?
similar to what I was telling her about pro scouting, like working on the exact craft, and I think that can be hard, but coaching at any level is good experience, whether that's a high school team, an AAU team, finding your voice, finding, if you were an assistant coach, what would you want to push? What kind of sets would you like to run? What kind of defense would you like to run? I think I did a lot of interviews for different coaching positions over the years, and I was always shocked how much when you ask people those questions of what kind of defense would you like to run if you wanted to be a coach, people don't have an answer. So I think trying to find what your answers are to those questions and being able to articulate them, even if they change over time, right? Like no one's going to hold you to if you said this at age 21 and then at age 31 you said something different. You're entitled to change your opinion, but trying to get actual hands-on experience at whatever level and showing that you can, you've tried it and can do it will be pretty important.
All right, good, Ian.
If there were an opportunity for, besides Duke, if you were to end up getting let's say an NBA job or college basketball, besides Duke or in the NBA, who would you want to be a GM for?
Well, if there was a team in San Diego, you'd go to San Diego.
Yeah, if the San Diego Rockets could come back into existence, it would be San Diego. Hard to say. I think what's so interesting about working in sports is that you don't really get to like choose your location very much. Like you have to, be ready to move to any city and any organization at any point. So hopefully, one that has strong ownership and everyone's aligned between GM, head coach, ownership, and all of those things together. But I think the reality of the business is you don't really get to script these things too closely.
All right. Seth, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I did. So with a lot of basketball players, especially coming out of college, kind of limiting their own playing time to kind of focus on the NBA, how much does that like muddy the waters for you as a scout, having to scout like the best players in the world, but maybe they're getting taken out of games that are like really important against ranked teams to avoid like getting their like stock tanked or something like that? How much does that muddy the waters for your job?
Are you making a Darren Peterson comment?
I might be making a Derek Peterson comment.
So what I would say with that situation, we actually don't really know what's going on. It sounds like he might be actually pretty injured, but we don't know, and I guess we'll find out closer to the draft. It's really hard because actually you get a reverse version of this too. Sometimes, less so now, but when I was starting, coaches would try to play players less as the season went on. Like this happened when Zach Collins was at Gonzaga. They would try to like keep them on the bench and not play them a lot and hope that no one would find out they're really good so that they wouldn't come out. And so the context with any of these things is super hard. There's tons of players who don't play as much as they should. And like I said earlier, I think all these things come down to like one data point where you're like, one, you have to really figure out what's going on. You can't jump to conclusions. Like I think with this situation that you mentioned, like people are jumping to the conclusions and the reality is we don't know. So you can't just assume something without knowing and trying to find as much information as you can about it. Once you get the information, you do the best you can. I mean, there's been so many examples of this. Kyrie Irving only plays half the season at Duke and still ends up being a top pick. Like, you get a bunch of these, and you just have to, like, if it's only 11 games, then you got to make sure you watch every minute of those 11 games and know them backwards and forwards and do the best you can. It probably leads to, less film, less minutes probably leads to a harder decision. But the reality is, like, you have what you have in front of you, and you have to do your best with it.
All right. I'll go all the way in the back.
As an avid sports fan myself, I always wonder how do you determine who gets a two-way contract, who gets an exhibit 10 contract, or even a 10-day contract. How does that all come together?
Yeah, I mean that's our whole year. That's like a big part of like our process and what we're working on. So year over year, you kind of have a bunch of lists to monitor these guys, and you're monitoring them constantly. It's not like, oh, and now we're going to make a two-way change, so thus we will look at who's playing well. It's kind of like a constant process of watching all the G League teams, watching international players, watching all of these guys, and seeing like who we think may pop and who's playing better. And the reality is also when someone plays well, like you want to jump pretty quickly. So if there's a guy that we loosely like, and then we realize in the first 10 games of the G League season he's played awesome, we might jump pretty quickly and like make a two-way change maybe quicker than we thought because he was playing above expectations. So all year, my group, so I have pro scouts that work for me, we're kind of monitoring all the G League players, all the NBA players who are more like end of rotation guys in case they get cut, like Dalen, and seeing kind of like an internal ranking, and then we do a bigger group ranking once we get closer to a decision point.
All right. Go ahead, Aiden.
What is the main difference that you've had within your opportunity since you've been with college, NBA, and the G League?
You mean like different? What do you mean by difference in opportunity?
Like difference that you witnessed in your role.
Oh, okay. Yeah, college totally different from NBA and G League. Just it's even though the operations are getting bigger, it's still a really small operation compared to an NBA team. Like an NBA team usually has its own huge facility and tons of employees and all of those things. Colleges tend to be significantly smaller than that, even if they're like a big staff like a Duke would be. So that's probably a big difference. And just shorter season, like shorter amount of time that you can do things or change things. You get the players for less amount of time, so I think player development can be somewhat hard in certain situations. NBA and G League, our situations are pretty close, so some of our resources overlap. But it's not exactly the same. NBA teams fly private, G League teams fly commercial. Like there is a difference in the resources we have, but you're close by enough that you get a little bit of the bleed over from that as well.
Very good. Let me go right here.
I gotta ask, who is your favorite player you've ever scouted? Not
Favorite.
necessarily the best player, but who's your favorite?
My favorite player I've ever scouted. Oof.
It's like you're a player that kind of came out of nowhere. You're looking at it and go, wow, I like this player.
I don't know if this is the story you wanted, but I'll give one of in Memphis. I ran the international group there as well, and I was traveling and saw this, like, I'd watched him for multiple years. A younger player, he was Bosnian playing in Turkey, and I just kept watching him, being like, I think this guy's pretty good. And we had a late second round pick, which usually means like that guy's either going to be a 2A or it's going to be an international draft and stash. So I ended up like pushing for this player pretty hard because I thought like, hey, we don't want this guy to come over anyway. Let's like take a flyer on this guy and see how good he is. And he's actually turned into like a EuroLeague star and been really good. He's still in Europe, but like that flyer has kind of turned into like somewhat of a valuable asset. So that one is probably like one of the more fun ones for me.
Are you amazed at the progression of the European players? I mean, I don't know what the percentage is in the NBA, but it's pretty high. It's pretty high.
It just shows you there's good basketball players everywhere. You just have to go find them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let me go here, Caden first.
So you said you don't really pay attention as much to the March Madness games because you don't want to kind of get faked out by a big performance.
I don't want to say we don't pay attention to them. We definitely watch them. We just try not to overweight them.
Right. I was going to ask, when you see teams like Miami, Ohio, that might not have as strong strength of schedule throughout the year, do their March Madness games matter a little bit more because you see them face off against stronger competition?
100%, yeah. Like, if it's a conference that doesn't get, like, as high level as opponents, the reality is you kind of have to weigh, like, you know, let's say they make it 2 or 3 games, then you have to weigh those games pretty, like, at a pretty high level because that's the best competition you're going to watch these guys play all year.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
There's been some all right players that come out of the Mid-American Conference, I will say, over the
There's
years.
there's always really good players. I think people think that, ACC, SEC, Big Ten, like, players come out of there. There's always good players every year that come out of the Missouri Valley, the MAC, you have to scout all of them, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Jenna.
I mean, obviously you can't go to every single game live to scout these players, but do you find yourself holding like players to like a different level when you're watching their films versus actually going to the game and watching it live?
So I think what's so great is that we have access to every game on film now. Like basically there's close to nothing that we can't find online. There's still some stuff, but more or less you have access to everything online. So it's an interesting shift of, I do think there's still a value to live scouting, and I think a lot of it, as I mentioned earlier, is like, how do they move? How do they carry themselves? Like athletically, how like truly athletic are they? But really, you're probably seeing a guy live once and then supplementing it with film the rest of the time. So you should never weigh one too much. You kind of have to like find a balance with it, I would say.
All right, so I'm thinking here, Ariana, I'm thinking you go home, all right, it's 8 o'clock, and you watch your film till 12, then you go in your reports, then you're getting up in the morning, you're going to practice. I mean, is that what it's like? I mean,
honestly,
are
yeah.
You're watching film all night long?
Yeah, I would have to count, but I'm watching like 20 basketball games a week or something. Like you're watching a lot of basketball all the time.
But you're not, I mean, it's different than a fan, right? Like, can you just give us a sense of, when you're watching on television, what can you pick up on television that maybe the ordinary fan would not see?
Yeah, so you're, for live, like live-ish like that, like it's like an NBA game is on at night. Well, I guess true with any game. So you usually have like your notes ready. You kind of know which players are standing out. Hey, this guy's playing well. So you're watching you're not watching the flow of the game as much as you're watching what that player does. So a thing that scouts always say is oftentimes you'll leave a game that you either watched on film or live and you say like, I didn't even know what the score was, because you're so focused on the players you wanted to see and what they did and how they're operating within the offense and within the defense that like, yeah, you generally know the flow of the game, but like, oftentimes I'll look up and be like, no idea it was an 18-point game, because I was so focused on like what those guys were doing and taking notes and like writing down, okay, this guy did this and this guy did that, because later I'm gonna have to turn it into a report, so I want to make sure all my notes are right. So you're less focused on this, because I think a real big trend if you're just watching, at home, is you're watching the ball. Where it's like if you're watching the ball, you're missing 80% of what's going on. So like we're not watching the ball as much. We're watching everything else. Not to say that we're not focusing on who's making a scoring play, but you kind of have to see as much as you can.
Is it unusual, or does it happen frequently where you're focusing on something and something else pops up?
All the time.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, also, like, our brains can't, watch exactly what 10 people are doing all the time. Like, you're trying your best to focus on what you can. But yeah, sometimes you'll go in to see one player and another player will pop. That happens all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Alan, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so with these international stars coming to college basketball, and real quick, I love how you mentioned the Mid-American Conference. I'm going to the championship game Saturday.
There you go. Beautiful.
With these international players coming to college basketball, one player that comes to mind is Dame Sarr. Does it make them more accessible for NBA scouting because you don't have to travel as far?
Because the international guys are coming. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, we see them more, which can be good and bad for the player. Because sometimes it'll, for every Dame Sarr, there's a Baba Miller who came over and didn't do as well. So I think we see them more, which is good. I think too early to say if it'll really affect their draft stock because there's players who are playing overseas, and if they play well on a EuroLeague team, that's also really important too. So I think the plus for us is that we can just see them more conveniently, but does it change the final outcome? Probably too early to say.
Okay. Go ahead, Sam.
If you were the GM of an NBA team, or let's just say the commissioner of the NBA right now, with there's some tanking issues, how would you change it, like a lottery?
I don't think I'm actually technically allowed to comment on that.
Yeah, we'll pass on that one. Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
it's a tough.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about some of the struggles in college game. The pro game has some challenges too.
Yeah.
For sure. Go ahead, Leo.
How has artificial intelligence affected your job with the Blue Coats and with the Sixers, and how do you think it will continue to affect that?
Helped, honestly. Helped in a lot of ways. I think for if we're talking at a super basic level, just ChatGPT is helpful for organization and keeping me on top of my I was about to curse, so I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, but keeping me on top of my stuff. And so very helpful for that. We use AI in a lot of modeling stuff to help identify players, which is super useful, and that's more of our analytics group, less of me, but you have to be kind of get those inputs and be able to respond to them. So I think if anything, the goal is always to get more accurate, right? The goal is just to get better at this and not have as many mistakes at at any level, whether it's a draft pick, whether it's someone you traded for, that's what everyone's aiming for, right? We want to get every decision right, and so AI is actually going to be super useful in helping us get more information, and it's not going to replace the live scout because that's just not in our field. I can't speak to other fields. It's just impossible to replace the live scout. I think it's just more going to aid what we're doing.
So Leo mentioned AI. Do you see other things that could potentially make the game different in 5-10 years from now?
Yeah, it's interesting how quickly these changes actually happen. In my time in the NBA, we've gone from aggressive small ball to playing bigger to the variance within the threes, to how we're being officiated. We weren't calling very much, and now we're calling a lot. So I think you see these changes happen more quickly and more often than we think, and there's a lot we can't anticipate with that. What does taking more threes mean for how players develop and what that's going to look like? We are seeing a bunch of new tech in the spaces as well. There's Hawkeye cameras in every NBA arena now, which is giving you kind of a skeletal feel of what's going on, and even what the player's looking at during the game. That didn't exist a few years ago, and so a lot of this new information's coming in, and everyone's trying to figure out how to use it. But I think that's going to continue to grow, and there's going to be stuff that we don't anticipate at all that's probably coming in.
You mentioned earlier you got involved in all this because of the relationship with Daryl Morey. How often do you talk with Daryl Morey? Now he's your boss, right? So how often do you talk with him? And I would imagine frequently. I mean, every day? Every day?
Probably close to
Pretty
every
close
day.
to every day.
I was on the phone with him on my way here earlier.
Yeah. I mean, are there certain things that you're talking about particular players, projecting things ahead? Just give us a sense of what that conversation's like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, at a base level, he's my boss. Anyone has a boss, and you kind of treat that as such. So depends on the time of year. During trade deadline, I was involved a lot of the organization of how we're going to approach the trade deadline in terms of which players do we want to be prepared on, which players do we want to study, what do we think going on with other teams. So let's say leading up to the trade deadline, it's a lot of okay, what are we going to focus on today? Are we going to focus on these teams and these players, and what are we going to talk about? This is what I'm hearing, and kind of communicating that information back. Different times of years, it might be a different time of year. It might be a little bit less information because there's not as much going on. Daryl is very awesome in that he really cares about the G League, so he really likes to know hey, we happened to lose yesterday, he called me to be like, what happened? Like, let's talk through what happened and see if there's anything, worth talking about there. So, yeah, it kind of depends on the time of year and what's going on, but it's usually related to Delaware or pro scouting.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, we got about 5-10 more minutes. Questions for? Go ahead, Rasmus.
So, I've been following the Bluecoats pretty well this year, and I'm sure you know this from, it's on the back of your hand, but the roster's been completely different than where it started, considering obviously two ways, bringing in new guys. So, what kind of when you go into a G League season, do you expect to make this many changes, or is this something where you're kind of like, you know what? I feel like we got to make some changes here, and hopefully it helps us in the long run as a G League team and as an organization entirely.
Yeah, I think this is true of NBA teams too, of when is the time to make a change, how to do that. G League teams' rosters will be more in flux than any NBA team roster will ever be. And a big part of that is because the two ways might be up or the two ways might be down. And right now, the two ways are with the NBA team. So what does that mean for the Bluecoats and what does that look like? And so I don't think you go in expecting a lot of change, but I tend to lean more towards, and a lot of this comes from, learning from Daryl and my previous bosses as well, of if something's not working, change it. Don't just, you can wait a certain amount of time and try to gain the information and see what's going wrong. But if the player's not working, if a player's a negative locker room presence that's really affecting the rest of the team, we should change that. We shouldn't just keep going in that direction just because, we made that decision in July and we have to stick to it. So, and it's also just an interesting push-pull of, we leading up to the G League trade deadline, I think we'd won 7 of 9. So obviously we're playing really well, but then these trades are coming up and you're like, well, I can't do anything after this date. So how do you balance, do we make a big change or do we just make a trade on the margins? And we ended up just making a trade on the margins. But I don't know that there's an exact right answer to that. It's kind of a feel and see how it goes and hope that it goes well.
When you were at USC, what was your major? Did you say?
Philosophy, politics, and law. Yeah, nothing related to what I'm doing now. But philosophy is generally applies to everything, is what I like to say.
Yeah, I didn't think you mentioned that before. So when did the basketball part click in? At what point? While you were still at USC, or did it really
before?
Even
yeah,
before?
Yeah.
I mean, you always played it.
Yeah, but I knew I wanted to do something in it pretty young.
And did you do anything with USC basketball when you were in school?
I did a whole mixture of things. I worked for the athletic department in a variety of roles, and then USC does a great job of trying to play. I mean, similar to what you guys are doing with the Coats now, of they try to place you in a bunch of different places. So for me, it was the Clippers and the sports agency as well.
So what would you tell our students? I mean, you went through this, and you had this major and didn't go down that path, and now where you are today. What would you tell them about things that they are experiencing now while they're in college? And obviously we have this wonderful partnership with the Bluecoats, but give them some kind of idea about the path that they're looking to embark on.
Yeah, I hope you guys know this, but the opportunity you guys are getting to get, and I'm not just saying this as a member of the Bluecoats, but actually getting the hands-on experience is pretty huge, and I think will come in really handy whenever you're interviewing for whatever job, whether it's sports or otherwise. I think something I see a lot in people I talk to is the balance of knowing a very specific niche you want to work in versus wanting to try out different things and figure it out. And I think there's an interesting balance of that. I realized pretty quickly when I was interning for the Clippers I was in a PR type role, and I was like, well, this isn't for me. I want to be closer to the basketball. So I think that there's a time of use this time to explore and be which one of these is for me? Which one of these paths makes sense for me? And then specialize. Once you realize that, and I don't think you have to do that too early on, but once you realize that, as I mentioned with the scouting reports before, try to get the most hands-on experience you can for that, so that a lot of times, we'll be in a scouting internship interview and people will say I just like sports, and I'm like, well, that's great, but that's that I can't really hire you because you like sports, and so I think it's okay to explore and try different things and really get the hands-on experience to see what works for you. But once you realize what works for you, try to get as much experience in that as you can.
I was talking to the president of the Salt Lake City team,
Yeah.
the G League, and they were interested in how we organized our partnership with the Bluecoats. I think the G League is just a remarkable league because players, it's not like minor league baseball. These players are one phone call away from being in the NBA.
For sure.
Which I think makes this a very unique league.
And I think there's been 68 call-ups this season. Like, there's a lot. And you got an opportunity to get called up very quickly.
Is that two-way players or just or
Any kind of, you were on a G League roster and you became an NBA. I think there's been 68 this year.
I mean, that's pretty remarkable. Jake, I think of you. I know you had your hand up earlier, but doing G League games, what is it like for you to be able to do a G League game and be at all the games that you've been at?
I think it's a really great experience to see players that are, again, either one phone call away from getting into the NBA for the first time, that have been in the NBA and are trying to get back. But I think the two ways, it's also really interesting because one night they're with the Sixers, the next day they're with the Bluecoats, and it's very easily, they just go back and forth. And so it's really cool to see guys that are playing in the NBA and also playing in the G League at the same time.
Yeah, we luckily we were able to do that with Marjan, as I mentioned, where Marjan came in, former NBA player, came in on an E10 and like really worked hard and developed this year, and we were able to reward him to get up on a 2A, which is quite cool.
Yeah. So let's just show again one more time the hands of those of that work with the Bluecoats this year. Look at the hand. Look at that.
Really
and
awesome.
and Leah in the backs work with the Bluecoats. I'm looking at some others that have worked with Bluecoats here over time. That we again 40 students, and I'm so grateful for what our students are able to experience with the Bluecoats. I think the league is just awesome, and the atmosphere sometimes you get that kid zone thing going on, and
Yeah.
when you have
It's fun. It's a fun environment for sure.
Is obviously your goal, I would imagine, is being an NBA GM. Is that the goal, or do you just want to I'm not focusing on that. I'm just looking at one step at a time.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to be both a GM and a good GM at some point, but I think taking it a step at a time and trying to get this experience and learn from that, so if I do get to that point, I can, be good at it as well. It's not just getting the job, but it's also doing the job at a high level, so hopefully continue down along that path.
I mean, just like our students are looking to gain some experience and to advance their career, everybody in the G League has that same
Which is what makes it
motivation.
really cool. Like, it's development for everyone. It's development for the coaches. It's development for me. It's development for the players. Like, it's across the board that we're all trying to, learn and get better, and everyone's kind of on that path together, which is really cool.
Well, this was fun. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for your support. Hopefully we give you something to root for.